Hello friends, my name is Kobe Hunter, and I know that everyone is a little nervous right now about the economy. Let's be honest, just hearing the word recession can make us all feel a little bit insecure. With crazy high inflation and rising interest rates, you've probably heard rumblings that an economic recession is looming, and you might be wondering what to do. Well, you don't need to freak out because in this video, I outline a 10-step process to hurricane-proof your finances and prepare for the storm of a recession. But first, let's answer a question a lot of you probably have on your mind. What is a recession? There's no shame if you were thinking, I've heard the word a bunch, but I'm not really sure what it means. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research, a recession is, quote, a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy that lasts more than a few months, end quote. Or in non-professor terms, the economy is just not doing too hot. The way people measure how the economy is doing is through GDP, or gross domestic product, which is the total value of all goods and services made and produced by the economy. Normally, GDP grows slowly and steadily over time, but in a recession, that growth halts. A recession is just a big word to describe when GDP is negative for at least 2 quarters, or in other words, GDP stops growing for at least 6 months. So over the last 6 months, GDP was negative 1.6% in the first quarter of 2022 and negative 0.9% for the second quarter of 2022. So technically, we're in a recession because we've had 2 negative quarters of GDP growth. But right now, a lot of people claim we're in the calm before the storm, and there's a much, much worse event on the horizon. But is that true? Well, maybe, but no one really knows. Recessions are kind of like hurricanes. It's really hard to predict when they'll hit and how much damage they'll actually cause. But instead of flooded streets, downed trees, and smashed houses, the damage from a recession usually looks like job losses, a falling stock market, and bankrupt businesses. So depending on the severity of the recession, you may or may not feel the impacts of it, despite the news blabbering about a recession all day long. As of right now, we are in a mild recession. Negative 1.6%, negative 0.9% isn't crazy bad. And the reality is that no one knows if this light rain will turn into a full-blown hurricane or not. Recessions, like rain, are a natural part of life, so it makes sense that we'll have them from time to time. We've actually had 13 recessions since World War II, and the average length of each recession was about 10 months. It's important to note that not every recession is as bad as the recent recessions we've had with the 2008 financial crisis or the COVID-19 pandemic. But no one can predict the future of how bad or good a recession might be, least of all economists. So we really have no idea what's going to happen. Some people say the hurricane is coming and others say the worst is over. But the smartest thing to do is prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So to help you guys out, I've designed a 10-step process to hurricane-proof your finances, whether you make $20,000 a year or $200,000 a year. Everyone can benefit from going through their finances and battening down the hatches. But before we jump into it, if you appreciate the time and effort it takes to create videos like this, give this video a like. And if you want more content on business, finance, and entrepreneurship, be sure to subscribe. I post 1 full-length video a week right now with inspirational and educational shorts on the daily. Your support really helps out the channel. As a thank you, here's a picture of a baby koala. And with that out of the way, here are 10 steps to prepare for a recession. Step 1, create a budget. In order to start building a budget, figure out your total household income from all sources, including you, your spouse/partner, and any other side hustles that bring in cash into your family. If you are making money from investments like rental properties or stock dividends, include them here as well. Or if you're entitled to child support, you should also include this here as well. Next, you need to list your monthly expenses, including your rent, mortgage payments, utilities, groceries, pharmaceutical, medical needs, childcare costs, debt payments, and insurance premiums, as well as any other regular expenses. It's okay if you don't know the exact number at first. When in doubt, round your expenses up. It's a lot better to have overestimated your expenses than underestimated them. Now, add everything up to figure out if you're spending more, less, or about the same as what you take home each month. Once you've done this, make a list of your essential expenses. This is a list of just the basics you need to survive. Your housing, transportation, and basic food costs should all be in this list. By making this list, you know how much money you need each month just to survive. This bare bones number should be significantly less than your current expenses, and hopefully you'll never have to cut back to this point. But it's really good to know your burn rate if you or your spouse lose your job. Step number 2, limit your expenses. Now that you've written down what your expenses are, the next step is to cut out things that you don't need in order to either A, start living below your means, or B, increase your ability to maximize step 4. If you want a video that deep dives into 5 ways to save $300 a month, check out this video after you're done watching this one. It outlines some unique ways to save more money. However you do it, the important thing is to reduce your spending. Maybe that means buying less clothes, eating out less, canceling some subscriptions, or carpooling to work. Every little change you make can help you prepare for if things get really bad. And if they don't get really bad, then you can reward yourself and take all that money you would have wasted on things that you didn't really need and spend it on something that actually gives you more value. On to step 3. Pay down high-interest credit card debt and refinance variable rates into fixed rates. If you have high-interest credit card debt or any other interest debt, use the money that you save from step 2 to pay down that debt. According to Matt Schultz, the chief credit analyst at LendingTree, quote, "Job number 1 for anyone with a credit card is to pay off their balances as soon as possible. When a recession may be on the way and interest rates are rising rapidly, it's even more important," end quote. As the Federal Reserve continues to raise interest rates, variable rate debt like credit cards will just get more expensive. These debts can make it a lot harder to survive in the case of a job loss or job reduction. If you have multiple high interest accounts, there are 2 main strategies you can implement. You can follow the Dave Ramsey approach, which is to close the smallest debt first, regardless of the interest rate. This quick win gives you a hit of dopamine that builds your determination to save. Even though some economists say that it's not the most mathematically sound approach, these economists recommend paying off the highest interest rate debt first, Ramsey says that if you struggle with building the willpower to save, this is a great methodology to use. If you don't think you can pay everything off in a timely manner, consider taking out a low-interest personal loan to pay off the higher-interest credit cards. You can dig out of debt a lot faster if you transfer high-interest debt to an account with 0% or a near 0% rate. If you can't qualify for a 0% credit card or personal loan, call your credit issuer and ask for an interest rate reduction. Matt Schultz said about 70% of people who asked for one in the last year got one, but far too few people ask. Remember, if you're falling behind, reach out to your creditors and ask for hardship concessions. This might include making interest-only payments on your debt or putting payments into forbearance. You can also check out your local bank or credit union for a personal loan. If you're making your payments on time, you can also ask your credit card company or any other lender about lowering your interest rates. You'll never know what agreement you and your creditor can reach if you don't ask. The worst thing that they can say is no. Step 4. Take the freed up cash and build up your emergency fund. The sad reality is that 56% of people in 2022 could not afford a $1,000 expense. This means that most of us don't have an emergency fund and need to build one. An emergency fund is a cash reserve that you keep on the sidelines in case some kind of financial emergency occurs. This could be a job loss, or it could be an unexpected car repair or other expense. An emergency fund should be equal to at least 3 months of all of your mandatory expenses like rent, gas, and food. So, for example, if your rent plus food plus gas was $3,000 a month, your 3-month emergency fund should be at least $9,000. A 6-month fund would be $18,000, and a year-long emergency fund would be $36,000. Preferably, your emergency fund should be closer to the 6 to 12-month range, but 3 months is a good place to start. This means that if you lose your job or your spouse loses your job, you won't have to take on credit card debt just to get by. Having an emergency fund can help you be less stressed as the winds of the economy blow. Also, as you build up your emergency fund, it gives you career and education flexibility. This means that if you wanted to go back to school or do something else in your career, you have that flexibility to do that because you don't rely on your paycheck to get by. If you don't have at least a 3-month emergency fund, you need to be putting as much cash into your emergency fund as possible. You'll need every little bit of it if your income stops flowing. This means giving up all the extras in life for a little bit, but I promise that you will have greater peace of mind from doing so. Step 5. Decide where to put your emergency fund. Okay, so you're on board with building up an emergency fund and you've been throwing your money into a checking account. But since hopefully you won't ever have to take advantage of this, or you won't have to take advantage of it for a really long time, we want to put it somewhere that will reduce the amount that inflation can eat away at it. So instead of leaving it in a checking account, you can transfer it over to a savings account, and since the Fed has been raising rates, there are actually some savings accounts out there with at least 2.5% or higher interest rates. Capital One offers a savings account with an interest rate of 2.35%, Basque Bank offers 3.05%, Citizens offers 3%, and SoFi offers 2.5%. Yes, you could likely get a higher return by putting your money into the market, but by leaving it in a high-yield savings account, you won't have to sell your stocks at a loss if you lose your job and the market is down by a ton. We are essentially hedging here. We are giving up on some gains for the security of if crap hits the fan, we'll be prepared. Step 6. Don't panic with your investments. If you're invested in the market, it can be really hard to see all of that green you become accustomed to turn red as interest rates rise and the economic outlook looks bleak. You might be tempted to sell out before things get worse, but this is one of the worst things you could actually do. By the way, if you want a more in-depth analysis of this principle, check out my How Fear and Greed Are Preventing You from Becoming Wealthy video, where I talk in depth about this. But essentially, over the long run, the market goes up. After every recession, there's been a bull market that pushes the market to all-time highs. If you sell out as the market is falling and buy as the market is hitting all-time highs and everyone is saying things can only go up from here, you will be selling low and buying high, instead of selling high and buying low. You'll be doing the exact opposite thing of what you're supposed to do. Warren Buffett said, "Be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful." Specifically, in the case of a recession, this means that if you've got your emergency fund set up and filled up, one of the best things you can do for your long-term wealth accumulation is dollar cost average into the market as it goes down. That way, you will guarantee you get amazing returns once the market returns to its all-time highs. Think about it. If you buy into the S&P 500 now, in a year if the market is back to where it was pre-dip, you'll have made 15 to 25% return. As a side note, I really recommend that you stay away from investing in individual companies and focus more on ETFs and index funds, because an ETF will never go bankrupt, but individual companies could. No one can outsmart the market unless you're a politician, but that's a whole other story. On to step 7, find other income streams. If you can grab a side hustle or two to do with your free time throughout the week, whether you're going to make $100 or $500 a week off this side hustle, it's more than nothing. And you can then use this money to grow your emergency fund, dollar cost average into the market, or pay off debt. Now you might be saying, "But Kobe, I'm already so tired from working all day. I don't think I could do a side hustle." My response to you is do a side hustle that is entirely different from your day job. So for example, if you sit at a desk all day, you could walk dogs or do some other physical activity as your side hustle. Just so you guys know, in the next couple of weeks, I'll be doing a series of shorts about some of the best side hustles where you can make $50 an hour. So be sure to subscribe if you want to see something like that. Step number 8, analyze your education. People with more advanced degrees get paid more, have more job security, and have more options than their coworkers with less advanced degrees. Where do you stand in your personal education journey? Would getting a certain certification, master's, or doctorate degree make you more valuable in the job market? Getting more education will make you more appealing in your job search and hopefully help you do better at your current job as well. For a lot of programs, you'll need to study for and take a standardized test. So studying for the GMAT, GRE, or LSAT and doing well on them could be a great thing to prepare you for a potential recession. In the case that the job market is really hard, you could choose to go back to school instead of struggling in an overly competitive job market. Then, hopefully by the time you get out of school, the market will have recovered and jobs will be more plentiful. Even if you can't go off to school, you can still learn a new skill that will make you more valuable at your current employer. Step 9, share this video with your friends. Now don't roll your eyes at me, I'm not shamelessly plugging you to like and share the video. Instead, I'm pointing out that if you do everything we've talked about thus far, but your family and friends don't, they will need your help if things get really bad. And of course, you'll want to help them, but the problem is that you're not a multimillionaire who can just give your brother 10 grand to pay off credit card debt, or give your sister 6 months of her expenses paid because she didn't have an emergency fund set up and follow steps 1 through 8. Encouraging people close to you to be financially responsible will save you from ever putting your friendship at risk because you lent them money and they haven't paid you back. Maybe helping them to be financially responsible comes in the form of encouraging your friends to do a cook from home night rather than eating out. Or maybe it's sending them this video so they can learn the important lessons that you've learned. If a hurricane were coming, you would tell your family to prepare for it, right? Well, the same thing applies here. One of the greatest gifts you can give someone is that of financial preparation. Finally, step 10, work hard in your current job. Sometimes when layoffs come, even the best employees get the axe as firms lay off entire divisions of the company. But oftentimes, employers choose to lay off people who don't perform as well. So if you work extra hard and produce really high quality deliverables, you will reduce your likeliness of getting let go. If you do get let go, don't play the shoulda, woulda, coulda game. It's happened and we can't control what already happened, but we can control what we do from here on. Maybe they told you the reason they were firing you is because you're not creative enough, for example. Well, don't let that get to you because Walt Disney was told the same thing and he turned out okay. This leads me to my bonus step 11. Try your best to relax. The world is crazy right now, but that doesn't mean we need to let the stress and craziness consume us. Think about the last 10 years and all the times things seemed terrible and how we just kept moving forward. Trust that everything will be okay and work your best to make it that way. I want you guys to remember that I know you're awesome and I believe in you. You guys can do this and make it through this economic uncertainty by following these principles and doing your best to be you. Don't ever let yourself or others tell you that you aren't worth it. I know that you're worth it. As a reminder, if you're still here right now, you probably enjoyed this video or at least found it informative. If you did, consider subscribing so you can get more cool videos about business, finance, and entrepreneurship just like this one. I really appreciate any support you guys give me. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.